Chapter 27. Becoming someone reliable. Reliability is usually discussed as a social quality. It is the trait people praise in others because it makes life easier. The person shows up, keeps promises, responds when needed, finishes what they start. Reliability, in that sense, is a form of service. It reduces friction for those around you. It creates trust. It makes work and relationships more stable. There is another kind of reliability that matters more and is far less visible. It is reliability to yourself. Most people live with a private instability they rarely name. They make plans with conviction and then break them quietly. They promise themselves they will begin tomorrow, and tomorrow becomes a soft postponement. They set standards that collapse the moment conditions are imperfect. They have moments of clarity that do not survive the first inconvenience. None of this is unusual. It is almost treated as normal. Yet it has a cost that is deeper than lost productivity. It erodes the inner anchor. An anchor is not motivation. It is something you can trust when the weather changes. Motivation is weather. Reliability is the rope. Without reliability, you drift, not dramatically, but constantly. You drift in small ways. A week passes, and the work you meant to do is still untouched. A conversation you meant to have is still avoided. A habit you meant to build is still theoretical. The drift becomes a lifestyle. The person begins living in a permanent state of almost. Almost is exhausting. It keeps the mind suspended between intention and reality. The person carries the weight of what they said they would do without receiving the relief of having done it. The mind holds the unfinished promise as tension. It becomes background pressure, and background pressure changes how the person feels about themselves. They may still appear competent, they may still produce results, yet privately they are not anchored. They do not trust their own direction, because direction is constantly rewritten by mood and circumstance. Reliability to yourself begins when intention becomes credible. Credibility is not created by strong desire. Desire is easy. Credibility is created by repeated follow-through. A person becomes reliable to themselves when the mind learns a new expectation. When I decide, I do. Not every time, not perfectly, but often enough that the decision is not a performance. The mind stops treating intentions as fantasies and starts treating them as commitments. This shift is quiet and consequential. It changes how you speak to yourself. A person who does not trust themselves tends to bargain internally. They use language of trying, hoping, intending. They leave exits open in every plan because they know, subconsciously, they might not follow through. A reliable person speaks more plainly because plain speech is safer when it is backed by action. They do not need to dramatize their plans. They do not need to convince themselves with intensity. They know the plan will be carried out because it has been carried out before. This is the anchor, evidence accumulated over time. Evidence is what steadies you on days when emotion is loud. On those days, the mind will offer excuses that feel intelligent. It will suggest delay, comfort, avoidance, distraction. It will argue that today is not the day, that conditions are wrong, that you are tired, that you will do it when you can do it properly. These arguments are not always false. They are often persuasive. The difference is that a reliable person no longer treats persuasion as authority. They may hear the argument. They do not have to obey it. Obedience to inner argument is the central way people become unreliable to themselves. They confuse feeling with instruction. They treat resistance as a verdict. They treat discomfort as a sign to stop, rather than as a sign that the work has begun. A reliable person is not someone who never feels resistance. It is someone who is no longer surprised by it. Resistance becomes part of the environment rather than a reason to abandon the plan. This is how reliability becomes an anchor rather than a performance. Performance requires the gaze of others. Anchor does not. Many people can be reliable when they are being watched. Deadlines create pressure. Social expectations create accountability. The person can rise under these conditions because the external consequences force coherence. But when nobody is watching, the inner structure often collapses. The person becomes looser with themselves. They delay. They indulge. They tell themselves they deserve a break, and then remain in break mode indefinitely. This is not a moral failure. It is an absence of internal authority. Internal authority is what makes reliability private. Private reliability is the capacity to do what you said you would do, even when the only witness is you. The mind resists this because it is accustomed to treating the self as negotiable. It will treat your own promises as optional, while treating others' expectations as binding. It will sabotage your long-term goals to satisfy your short-term comfort, and then it will ask why you feel dissatisfied. Dissatisfaction is often the feeling of being unled. When nobody is leading you, life becomes a series of impulses. You become governed by the most immediate force: hunger, fatigue, boredom, fear, social pressure. These forces are not enemies, they are normal signals. The problem is when they become rulers. A person who is ruled by their signals cannot build anything that requires time, because time requires continuity, and continuity requires the capacity to persist through fluctuating internal weather. Reliability is what makes time usable. It is the tool that allows effort to compound. Compounding is not only financial, it is skill, trust, stability, freedom. None of these compound without repeated action. The mind may understand this intellectually and still fail to live it, because living it requires returning without drama. Returning is the essence of reliability. It is not the intensity of one day, it is the quiet continuity of many days. The mind does not respond to one heroic surge, it responds to repeated proof. This is why reliability changes identity from the inside. A person who is unreliable to themselves often lives with a subtle suspicion of their own intentions. They may make big plans and feel inspired, yet somewhere beneath the inspiration is the awareness that inspiration has come before and dissolved. They are not only uncertain about the future, they are uncertain about themselves. This uncertainty creates anxiety, and the anxiety often leads to more avoidance, which confirms the uncertainty. The person becomes trapped in a self-reinforcing pattern. Reliability breaks the pattern by creating a new baseline. The baseline is not achievement, it is follow-through. Follow-through creates calm in a way that comfort does not. Comfort is immediate relief. Follow-through is long-term relief. It reduces the number of open promises you are carrying. It reduces the amount of self-negotiation required each day. It reduces internal noise because fewer parts of you are arguing. The person becomes calmer not because life is easier, but because they are not constantly disappointing themselves. This calm becomes an anchor in moments of doubt. Doubt is inevitable. There will be days when you question your direction, your capacity, the value of what you are building. On those days, a person without reliability is vulnerable because doubt can easily become paralysis. The mind says, maybe this is wrong, and because there is no strong pattern of action to counterbalance the doubt, the person stops. The stop becomes evidence, and the doubt deepens. A reliable person still doubts, but doubt does not automatically change behavior. The anchor holds. The anchor holds because it is built from habit, not from belief. Belief is unstable. Habit is sturdier. Habit here does not mean mindless repetition. It means the repeated choice to return. Returning is what keeps a life from being determined by the weather of the mind. A person who returns becomes predictable to themselves. Predictability is not dullness, it is safety. It means your future is not constantly being renegotiated by your present mood. It means you can make plans and trust that they will not be abandoned at the first discomfort. Trusting yourself is the deepest form of stability available. It is also rare because it requires being honest about what you can commit to and then honoring it. Many people attempt to become reliable by making larger promises. They think the answer is bigger ambition, bigger schedules, bigger intensity. This often backfires because larger promises create larger opportunities for self-betrayal. Self-betrayal is what destroys reliability. Reliability is not built by grand declarations. It is built by commitments small enough to be kept and repeated long enough to become identity. Identity follows what you do, not what you want. When you repeatedly return, you begin experiencing yourself as someone who returns. That experience becomes an anchor. It is not pride, it is orientation. It means that when conditions are poor, you do not have to debate whether you are the kind of person who can continue. You already know. The evidence exists. The evidence is not dramatic, it is simply there. The accumulated weight of repeated follow-through. This weight is what steadies you when life becomes chaotic. Chaos does not only come from work, it comes from health, family, unexpected events, seasons of stress. A person with no internal anchor becomes easily thrown. They lose their routines, their standards, their sense of direction. They become reactive, and their life begins to feel as though it is happening to them. A reliable person still feels the impact of chaos, yet they have a thread they can hold. They can return to the next small act that preserves continuity. They can keep something moving. That movement keeps them from drowning in the chaos. Reliability is not about being impressive. It is about not being lost. It is the difference between a person who is tossed by their days and a person who uses their days. It is the difference between someone who is always starting over and someone who is simply continuing. Starting over is emotionally expensive because it requires new motivation each time. Continuing is cheaper. It requires only return. The reliable person may not feel inspired. They may not feel ready. They may not feel good. They return anyway. Not because they are forcing themselves, but because returning has become their way of respecting themselves. Self-respect is not a feeling you wait for. It is the byproduct of being dependable. Not dependable for applause, not dependable for reputation, but dependable in private. Dependable when no one will congratulate you. Dependable when the only consequence is the quiet integrity of keeping your own word. That integrity becomes an anchor that does not depend on external stability. It travels with you. It steadies you when your mind is loud. It steadies you when life is uncertain. It makes you someone you can rely on. And when you can rely on yourself, you stop living as a person who is constantly negotiating with the moment. You begin living as a person who is directed.